He had everything money could buy: mansions, fast cars, and power, but Adrian Cole had never owned the one thing he truly wanted: someone who loved him for who he was, not for his fortune. Tired of shallow friendships and false smiles, he left the glittering city behind, disguised himself as a simple farmer, and moved to a quiet town where no one knew his name. Here, among fields, animals, and neighbors who didn't care about wealth, Adrian hoped to find something priceless: a genuine connection. Adrian Cole was a man who had everything people said one could ever want. He owned towering office buildings, fast cars, and an endless stream of luxurious possessions. His life, from the outside, looked perfect. People admired him, envied him, and even feared him a little. But behind the walls of his mansions and the suits of finely tailored clothing, Adrian felt a hollow emptiness that no wealth could fill. He had spent decades building his empire, trusting very few, and forming relationships mostly with people who had hidden motives. Every compliment seemed coated with curiosity about his money. Every smile seemed to carry a question about what he could give them. Adrian was tired of wondering whether anyone liked him for who he truly was, rather than for his fortune. Even though he was always surrounded by assistants, business partners, and socialites, Adrian felt loneliness pressing in on him. It was strange, thinking that a man with so much could feel so small. He had never imagined that reaching the top would lead to a life where friendships felt shallow and conversations always had an underlying agenda. He began to notice it in simple things: people laughing a little too loudly at his jokes, friends suddenly appearing when he signed big deals, and strangers who seemed kind only when he spoke of his wealth. These patterns, small at first, had grown into a large shadow over his life, convincing him that love and friendship were things he might never experience in their pure form. One rainy evening, Adrian found himself wandering his mansion alone, watching the raindrops race down the windows, and thinking about how few people would care about him if he lost everything tomorrow. The thought was terrifying, yet oddly liberating. He realized he wanted something that money could never buy: someone who would see him for who he truly was. Someone who would like him because of his character, his humor, or even his small flaws, not his fortune. And with this realization came a daring idea. Maybe the only way he could find such a person was to remove himself from the world that knew Adrian Cole, billionaire, and step into a life where no one knew his name or his money. He started researching ways to disappear from the public eye without raising suspicion. He rented small properties in remote areas under fake identities, read books about farming and self-sufficient living, and even took weekend trips to the countryside alone. At first it was awkward. Adrian, who had spent years in air-conditioned offices and on private jets, now struggled with basic chores like milking a cow or planting vegetables. His hands, unaccustomed to labor, quickly blistered and ached. But instead of being discouraged, he found the challenge strangely satisfying. The physical work, the rhythm of the land, and the quiet of nature gave him a sense of peace he had never known. In those moments, he felt human, not a CEO in a gold-plated office. To the outside world, became Adam, a simple, hard-working man with no interest in wealth or luxury. Adrian carefully shed every trace of his former life. He sold some of his flashy cars and replaced them with an old pickup truck. He packed away his designer suits and wore plain clothes, blending in with the locals. He stopped using his personal phone and replaced it with a basic one, learning how to live with only the essentials. It was a transformation that surprised even him. Slowly, the walls he had built around his heart started to crack, and he began to feel emotions that had long been buried under ambition and suspicion, living this new life. Adrian discovered small joys he had forgotten existed: the warmth of the sun on his face during early morning chores, the satisfaction of cooking a simple meal with food he had grown himself, and the quiet nights where he could hear the wind rustling through the trees instead of city sirens. He even started to notice people differently, observing their kindness, their laughter, and their patience. He realized that much of the world he had left behind had no time for these simple pleasures. For the first time in years, he felt like he could breathe freely without pretending to be someone else. Yet Adrian also knew that this new life had a purpose beyond personal enjoyment. He had a mission: to find someone who could love him for Adam, not Adrian Cole. He wanted a partner who would appreciate his company without considering the weight of his bank account or the power of his name. This mission made every small task, every awkward encounter, and every moment of vulnerability feel like a step towards something greater. He began imagining what it would be like to sit by a fire, share stories, and laugh with someone who saw him as equals, not as a symbol of wealth. The thought gave him hope and kept him motivated during the long, sometimes lonely days on his new property. Adrian's first few days living as Adam were full of mistakes and awkward situations. He forgot to water some of the plants, miscalculated how much feed the animals needed, and struggled to understand the town's customs. He worried that he was too old to learn a new way of life. But every small success, like repairing a fence or helping a neighbor, filled him with quiet pride. He started to see that a life without pretense could be richer in ways money had never provided. Every time he laughed without worrying about appearances or shared a meal without thinking about expenses, he felt closer to the kind of life he had always dreamed of but never known. Over time, the rhythm of farming life began to shape Adrian's thoughts and feelings. The slow pace allowed him to reflect on his past decisions, his priorities, and the relationships he had neglected. He started to appreciate patience, humility, and the importance of genuine human connection. He remembered friends he had lost, conversations he had ignored, and love he had overlooked because he had been too focused on ambition. These reflections were bittersweet, reminding him of what he had missed, but also guiding him toward what he could now seek. Living as Adam was not just a disguise. It became a journey of self-discovery, teaching him to value sincerity over status and connection over appearance. Adrian also began observing the people in the small town with a keen eye, noticing kindness and generosity that went unnoticed in his former life. Neighbors who shared fresh eggs, local shopkeepers who greeted him warmly, and children who laughed without care, all fascinated him. He realized that life in the town was not easier, it was simply more honest. People had no reason to hide behind masks or ambitions, and their interactions felt genuine. This realization strengthened his resolve to remain Adam long enough to find someone who would value these truths rather than wealth or social standing. By the end of his first few weeks as a farmer, Adrian felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He had shed the layers of his old identity, but the fear of failure lingered. Could he truly find a partner who would love him for who he was, not for what he had? He knew the journey would not be easy, but he also knew that it was a journey worth taking. Each day, as he worked in the fields and listened to the quiet hum of rural life, he felt a small but growing sense of hope that he might finally find the connection he had longed for his entire life. Adrian, now living as Adam, slowly began to find his place in the small town. Every day was a mix of hard work and small victories. He would wake up before sunrise, feeling the chill of the morning air on his face, step out to feed the chickens, collect eggs, and water the crops. At first, he often stumbled, dropping baskets or forgetting small details, but the townspeople were patient with him. They treated him as one of their own, a quiet man trying his best, and that simple acceptance gave Adrian a strange comfort. It was the first time in years he didn't have to prove himself. The first time he felt like he belonged somewhere without being judged for his past or wealth. He took to walking around the town, learning the rhythms of the local life. There was a small general store where everyone greeted him warmly, a tiny cafe with hand-painted signs where the smell of fresh bread always made him smile. In a park where children played while parents watched nearby, Adrian noticed small details he had never appreciated before: the laughter of people sharing a meal, the friendly nods of neighbors, the simple joy of a child chasing a dog. These things were foreign to him. In his world of board meetings and business deals, such moments had been rare or rushed. Now every small scene made him feel alive in a way money had never given him. One morning, while carrying a basket of vegetables to the market, he first noticed Alina. She was arranging flowers at the small schoolhouse garden. Her hands gentle with the petals, her face focused yet peaceful. There was an effortless grace in the way she worked, a patience and kindness that immediately caught his attention. Adrian felt a strange pull, a curiosity that went beyond simple attraction. He realized quickly that this wasn't about appearances or charm. There was something genuine about her energy, something that drew people toward her naturally. He found himself wanting to know her, to understand the life she lived so differently from his own. Their first interaction was simple and awkward. Adam, trying to carry 2 overflowing baskets of produce, tripped slightly, almost spilling everything. Alina laughed softly, helping him stabilize the baskets. Her laugh wasn't fake or forced, was warm and sincere. He thanked her, feeling a flutter he hadn't experienced in years. Their conversation was brief, polite, and ordinary, yet it left a lingering warmth in Adrian's chest. Over the next few days, he found excuses to cross paths with her, helping at the school garden, attending the local weekend market, or simply stopping by to ask questions about the crops. Every encounter deepened his admiration for her patience, intelligence, and kindness. He realized that he wanted to spend more time with her, not because of attraction alone, but because she made him feel calm and accepted. Adrian was careful. He had to maintain his identity as Adam, the simple farmer. He couldn't let a word slip, couldn't let a gesture reveal his wealth or background. The task was harder than he expected. In his previous life, he had been confident, commanding, and precise, used to people deferring to his knowledge or influence. Now, he had to be cautious, humble, and patient, learning how to interact without impressing anyone with money or status. Every small social mistake made him self-conscious. But it also reminded him how refreshing it was to live a life where honesty mattered more than reputation. As weeks passed, Adrian began participating more in the town's routines. He helped repair fences, dug irrigation ditches, and learned the art of tending to animals. Each task connected him to the land and the community in a way he had never experienced in his corporate life. The work was tiring, his muscles ached, and sometimes he returned to his small cabin exhausted. Yet he also felt a sense of accomplishment that no business deal could ever give him. There was a tangible result to his efforts, a clear connection between action and outcome. He found satisfaction in simple achievements, a repaired fence, a healthy crop, a grateful neighbor, and it brought a new meaning to his life. Alina, meanwhile, began noticing Adam more often. There was something different about him. He wasn't flashy or attention-seeking. He didn't try to impress anyone, yet he carried himself with quiet confidence. She admired his willingness to help and the care he showed for the animals and plants. Slowly, they started to share longer conversations, talking about the school, the community, and their favorite places in town. Adam listened more than he spoke, absorbing her words with genuine interest. For Adrian, these conversations were intoxicating. He had spent years interacting with people who talked for the sake of status or profit. The tale in his words were real, thoughtful, and unselfish. She made him feel seen not as a man with money, but as a human being. Adrian found himself struggling with feelings he had long ignored. He was falling for Alina, and the intensity of this emotion surprised him. In the past, he had been wary of love, always suspecting ulterior motives. But with her, it felt natural, simple, and honest. Yet he was also fearful. How could he balance his desire to know her with the need to keep his true identity hidden? Every kind word, every smile, every shared laugh felt like a treasure. But he knew the moment she discovered the truth would be dangerous. The thought of losing her before she even understood him was unbearable. Yet he couldn't bring himself to reveal everything, not yet. One evening, as the sun set over the fields, Adam and Alina sat together on the edge of the garden, sharing stories about their childhoods. She talked about growing up in the town, the adventures she had as a child, the dreams she still hoped to achieve. He listened, occasionally sharing small anecdotes about his own past, but always carefully omitting details that might reveal his real life. It was in these quiet, ordinary moments that Adrian felt a profound sense of belonging. He realized that connection didn't come from wealth or status, but from shared experiences, laughter, and understanding. He also realized that he was experiencing the kind of intimacy he had always craved but never known as their friendship grew. Adrian also noticed the community's subtle support. Neighbors would offer advice, welcome him to local events, and include him in small celebrations. He realized that part of Elena's charm was how she brought people together. Her kindness was not just in words, but in action. She encouraged a sense of belonging and trust among everyone around her. Watching her interact with others made him admire her even more. He saw not just the person she was, but the effect she had on the world around her as simple. It's a quiet force of goodness that inspired others. However, life as Adam was not without its challenges. Sometimes Adrian struggled with the manual labor, the long days in the sun, or the patience required to learn new skills. He occasionally felt the tug of his former life, remembering his mansions, his luxury cars, and the ease of having assistants take care of everything. Yet these thoughts were fleeting, and he quickly realized they didn't matter here. What mattered was being present, contributing, and experiencing life as it truly was. Each challenge, each small failure, and each success reinforced his desire to continue. To see where this life and this connection with Elena could lead by the end of several months. Adam had become a known and accepted part of the town. He was no longer an awkward outsider. He was a helpful neighbor, a willing participant, and someone people could rely on. Elena, too, had grown comfortable around him, trusting his opinions, laughing at his occasional clumsiness, and enjoying his quiet presence. Their bond had strengthened, built not on grand gestures or wealth, but on shared experiences, mutual respect, and genuine human connection. For Adrian, this was everything he had ever hoped for, a life where he could be himself, and a growing relationship that felt real and unforced. The summer was unusually dry that year, and the fields around the small town began to suffer. Crops that usually thrived were wilting under the harsh sun, and the local farmers grew anxious. Water became scarce, and tension ran through the community as everyone tried to save what they could. Adam, who had been steadily learning the ways of the land, watched the drying soil with a growing concern. Though he was still living as a humble farmer, his mind carried knowledge far beyond the town's expectations. He understood how irrigation, crop rotation, and careful planning could make a difference, even under extreme conditions. But he also knew he had to be careful. He couldn't reveal too much of what he really knew or risk drawing suspicion. At first, Adam focused on small, practical solutions. He helped neighbors dig channels to guide water efficiently, taught them how to prioritize which crops needed attention first, and shared tips he had secretly studied about soil preservation. People began to notice that he had an unusual skill for someone who had supposedly been a farmer for only a few months. They appreciated his help, but started whispering among themselves. Where did Adam learn so much? They asked. Adam only smiled humbly, saying he had picked up tricks from older farmers, careful not to reveal his true life. He felt a strange satisfaction he was making a real difference. And yet he had to hide behind a simple mask. Elena noticed his efforts, too. She had seen him struggling with the heat and the manual work, yet he never complained. Now, as he helped the community navigate this crisis, she was impressed by his patience and knowledge. One afternoon, she approached him while he was fixing a broken irrigation pipe. "Adam," she said, wiping sweat from her forehead, "I don't know how you know so much about this, but I'm really grateful for your help. You've made this difficult time easier for all of us." Adam felt a warm rush of pride and relief. Her words reminded him why he had come to this place in the first time he wanted genuine connection. And here it was, growing quietly amid the fields and sweat as the days passed. Adam's guidance began to show results. The crops that were once on the verge of dying started to recover, and the farmers' spirits lifted. Children ran through the fields again, laughing as the water flowed steadily through the channels Adam had helped dig. Elena worked alongside him, planting seedlings and tending vegetables, and the two of them shared small, meaningful moments. They would pause to laugh when an animal got in the way, or wipe dirt-streaked hands and exchange glances that lingered a second longer than necessary. Every shared smile, every gentle word, deepened the connection that had been building between them since he first arrived. But with success came suspicion. Rumors started spreading quietly through the town. People noticed that Adam was unusually knowledgeable, that he sometimes disappeared for hours only to return with new ideas or tools, and that he seemed to handle problems in ways the average farmer could not. Whispers of curiosity turned into speculation. Where does he go? Some asked. How does he know so much? Others simply admired him without question. But Adam could feel the tension rising. He realized that the longer he stayed, the more likely it was someone might uncover the truth about who he really was. The delicate balance he had maintained between honesty and secrecy was starting to wobble. One afternoon, a visiting journalist came to the town to cover the drought and its impact. While interviewing local farmers, the journalist noticed Adam giving detailed instructions on how to protect the crops. Curious, he asked Adam to share his name and story for the article. Adam hesitated, caught in a dangerous moment. He knew that any slip could expose him, yet he also wanted to help the town. He gave his alias Adam and spoke humbly about learning from older farmers, careful not to hint at his true identity. The journalist wrote the piece, praising a dedicated young farmer for his contributions to the town. While the article highlighted his efforts, it also drew attention to him, increasing curiosity among locals and outsiders alike. As the story circulated, Alina stumbled upon it. She had been at the local library when she saw the headline. A photograph accompanied the story of a man who looked very familiar, strikingly similar to Adam. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized it was him. Confusion, curiosity, and a little fear filled her mind. She didn't know what to think. Could it be a coincidence, or was there more to Adam than he had let on? She decided to wait, to observe, and to understand before confronting him. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and Alina, who'd come to trust and admire Adam, now found herself questioning the truth of everything they had shared. Adam, unaware that Alina had seen the article, continued his daily routines. He worked in the fields, helped neighbors, and shared quiet moments with Alina, all while feeling the invisible pressure of the town's watchful eyes. The balance he had maintained was becoming more fragile, and he sensed that the end of his secrecy might be approaching. He had always known this day would come, yet he hoped it would be later rather than sooner. His heart ached at the thought of disappointing Alina, of losing the genuine connection they had nurtured. Every action now carried weight, not just for the community, but for the fragile trust he had built with her. Despite the looming risk, the town continued to rely on him. People came to Adam for advice, solutions, and reassurance. They respected him not just for his skills, but for his humility and kindness. Children would run to greet him. Farmers would ask for his opinion. And even those who whispered about his mysterious knowledge secretly admired him. Adam found comfort in this quiet admiration, knowing that, for the moment, he had succeeded in becoming someone who mattered, not because of money, but because of effort, skill, and heart. For Adrian, this was both thrilling and terrifying, a new kind of influence. One that was earned, not inherited. The tension reached a turning point one evening when Alina approached him near the garden. She looked troubled but determined, holding a newspaper in her hand. Adam felt his stomach tighten, sensing that the moment he had feared was here. Alina didn't speak immediately. She just held out the paper. Adam's eyes followed her gesture and froze when he saw the headline and photograph. Time seemed to slow as he realized that the truth he had kept hidden for months was now staring both of them in the face. He could see the hurt and confusion in her eyes, and his mind raced for the right words. He wanted to explain, to tell her everything, but he also feared losing her forever. The confrontation was inevitable. Alina finally broke the silence, her voice a mix of anger and disbelief. Adam, or should I say, Adrian, how could you hide this from me? Why didn't you tell me who you really are? Her words struck him deeply, more than any loss in business or criticism from the media ever had. He realized that despite the progress he had made, despite the genuine connection they shared, his deception had created a chasm between them. His heart ached at the thought of losing the trust and affection they had carefully nurtured. This was the moment he had always feared, the moment when truth and trust collided. Adam, now fully Adrian in her sight, tried to explain. He spoke of his loneliness, of the emptiness behind the wealth, and of his desire to find someone who could love him for himself, not his money. He described the years of suspicion, the shallow relationships, and the fear that no one could ever see the real him. Alina listened, her eyes narrowing at times, softening at others. She felt a whirlwind of emotions, betrayal, confusion, empathy, and a reluctant understanding. For Adrian, it was a moment of vulnerability, unlike any other in his life. He had removed every mask, exposing himself completely, hoping that honesty might still preserve what they had built. The next few days were difficult. Alina avoided him, unsure whether she could trust the man who had deceived her. While Adrian grappled with the consequences of his actions, the community noticed the tension but was careful not to interfere. For the first time, Adrian realized that actions, even well-intentioned ones, have consequences that no skill or wealth could undo. He felt the weight of the deception he had carried, the impact it had on someone he deeply cared about, and the fragile nature of the trust he now had to rebuild. Despite the pain, he also felt hope that with time, patience, and honesty, he might repair what had been broken. Through all this, the drought continued, and the town's crops slowly recovered thanks to his efforts. Even as his personal life faced turmoil, Adrian realized that his contribution to the community was genuine and lasting. He saw that value wasn't in wealth or status, but in the tangible difference one could make with effort and heart. Alina, too, began to reflect, realizing that, while she felt betrayed, the man before her had shown extraordinary kindness and competence, qualities she rarely encountered. Both of them were at a crossroads, facing difficult choices about trust, love, and forgiveness. Unsure what the future held, but knowing that the next steps would define the rest of their connection. The days after Alina discovered Adam's true identity were heavy with silence and tension. Adrian, who had always been in control in every part of his life, felt powerless for the first time. He wandered the fields that had once given him peace. But now every corner of the small town reminded him of the secret he had tried so hard to keep. He replayed every conversation, every shared laugh, and every moment with Alina, questioning if the truth had been worth revealing or if it had destroyed the fragile connection they had built. For the first time in his life, Adrian felt fear not for his reputation or fortune, but for something far more personal, the possibility of losing someone who truly mattered. Alina, on the other hand, was struggling with her own emotions. She had grown to admire Adam's patience, kindness, and humility, and the sudden revelation that he was Adrian Cole, the billionaire, felt like a betrayal. Every memory they shared now carried a shadow of doubt. She wondered which moments had been genuine and which had been influenced by his hidden identity. Yet deep down, she couldn't deny the truth she had seen in his actions. Adam had helped the town selflessly, cared for people without expecting anything, and even brought hope during the drought. These qualities were real, but the deception had shaken her trust, and she didn't know if she could see past it. Her mind was a storm of anger, confusion, and reluctant admiration. Adrian knew that time alone would not fix what had been broken. He had to face Alina, to show her that his intentions were sincere, and that his feelings had never been anything less than genuine. But approaching her felt like walking a tightrope. One wrong word, one misstep, could push her further away. He decided to start small, helping the community in quiet ways while giving her space. He repaired fences that had been damaged by storms, tended the garden she loved so much, and offered support to neighbors without drawing attention. Every action was a silent message. He was still the same man she had admired, even if the name attached to him had changed. Despite the tension, Alina observed him from a distance. She noticed how he continued to work tirelessly for the town, how he interacted with children, neighbors, and animals with genuine care. Slowly, her anger began to soften, replaced by a cautious curiosity. She remembered the person she had met weeks ago, the man who laughed without pretense, who worked with patience, and who showed kindness without expecting reward. That man still existed, and she couldn't deny the impact he had on the community, or on her own heart. Conflicted but unwilling to confront him immediately, she watched silently, trying to reconcile the man she knew with the identity she had just discovered. The media frenzy that followed the discovery of Adrian Cole's presence in the town added another layer of complication. Journalists arrived, curious about the billionaire living as a farmer, and the peaceful town felt suddenly exposed. Adrian tried to protect the townspeople, diverting attention away from Alina and others who might be caught in the spotlight. He felt responsible not only for his own actions, but also for the intrusion his revelation had caused. Every reporter's question reminded him that honesty carried consequences far beyond personal relationships. And he began to realize that trust and reputation were fragile, delicate things that could not be controlled entirely by money or influence. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Adrian finally found the courage to approach Alina. She was working in the garden, her hands covered in soil, her expression focused yet guarded. He stood a few feet away, unsure how to start. "Alina," he said softly, "I know I've hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me easily. But I need you to understand why I did what I did." She looked up, her eyes searching his face, torn between anger and the memory of the man she had come to care for. He continued, explaining his loneliness, his fear of being loved for money, and his desperate desire to find someone who could see him for who he truly was. He spoke openly, vulnerably, without excuses, revealing emotions he had long hidden even from himself. Alina listened, her emotions shifting with each word. She felt the weight of his honesty, the rawness of his confession, and the sincerity that underpinned it. She remembered the times he had laughed with her, helped the children, and worked tirelessly for the town. These actions were real, and they could not be faked. Slowly, she began to understand that while the deception had been painful, it had come from a place of fear and longing, not malice. Her anger remained, but it softened enough to allow a glimmer of empathy to take root. She realized that she could not deny the truth of his character, even if she questioned the methods he had used to protect it. The days that followed were a delicate dance. Adrian gave Alina space, allowing her to process her feelings, while continuing to demonstrate through actions that he was the same person she had trusted and admired. He helped her at the school garden, carried water for the plants, and repaired tools without seeking recognition. Slowly, Alina began to engage with him again, first with cautious conversation, then with laughter over small mistakes, and eventually with a tentative warmth that suggested the possibility of reconciliation. Trust, she realized, was not rebuilt overnight, but step by step. Through consistency and sincerity, during this time, the town also began to show its quiet support. Neighbors offered help, sharing tips and resources without asking questions about his identity. They respected him not only for his knowledge, but for the humility and care he demonstrated every day. Children ran to greet him, and adults sought his advice, not for status, but for practical guidance. Adrian saw this as a reminder that value was measured not by wealth or reputation, but by the difference one could make in the lives of others. It reinforced his desire to live genuinely, to be appreciated for character and action rather than fortune. Alina observed these interactions and began to see the bigger picture. She noticed that his contributions were consistent and selfless, that he did not flaunt knowledge or skill, and that his kindness extended to everyone equally. Slowly, the narrative of betrayal was tempered by recognition of his integrity. She began to remember the early days when Adam had first arrived, awkward, humble, and genuinely trying to fit in. That image, combined with his recent actions, created a bridge between anger and understanding. She realized that while the deception had been wrong, the person she had come to care for had always been true to his core values. One evening, as the sun set over the fields, Adrian and Alina shared a quiet moment. They sat side by side, not speaking much, letting the silence carry the weight of unspoken words. For the first time since the revelation, there was no tension, only reflection. Adrian felt a cautious hope that perhaps this could be the beginning of rebuilding trust. Alina felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. Recognizing both the sincerity in his actions and the pain caused by his secrecy, it was a delicate balance, fragile but promising, and it marked a turning point in their relationship, a recognition that honesty and effort could begin to heal what had been broken. Over the next weeks, their interactions slowly normalized. They worked together in the garden, helped with community projects, and shared meals without the weight of pretense. Adrian continued to live simply, maintaining the routines of Adam the farmer. Alina began to interact with him without constant suspicion. Each shared smile, laugh, and small act of kindness helped rebuild the bridge between them. Trust was returning, not fully, but in small increments, fragile yet undeniable. The experience had taught them both that honesty, while sometimes painful, was necessary, and that true connection required both courage and patience. By the end of this period, Adrian realized that his journey had changed him profoundly. The fear of losing Alina, combined with the necessity of proving his sincerity, had taught him humility, patience, and the importance of genuine relationships. Alina, in turn, understood that people could be more than their mistakes, and that character was revealed through actions as much as words. Both were navigating uncharted emotional territory, aware that the path forward would require care, trust, and understanding. Yet, there was hope, a fragile, precious hope, that their connection, tested by truth and deception, could survive and even grow stronger with time. Months passed since the revelation of Adam's true identity, and the small town slowly returned to its peaceful rhythm. Adrian, who had spent so much time hiding behind the guise of a simple farmer, now faced the challenge of living openly without losing the trust and relationships he had built. The experience had taught him a profound lesson. Honesty and sincerity were far more valuable than wealth or status. Though the path ahead was uncertain, he was determined to show that the man Alina had come to know was real, that the connection they shared had been genuine all along, and that he was willing to earn her trust back. Step by step, Adrian continued to live in the town, not as a billionaire flaunting his wealth, but as a man committed to the life he had grown to love. He invested quietly in the community, repairing old buildings, improving irrigation systems, and donating resources without fanfare. He wanted the townspeople to feel the benefit of his presence, not the pressure of his wealth. He worked alongside farmers, learning from them as much as he contributed, proving that his commitment to the land and people was sincere. Slowly, the community began to accept him fully again, seeing him as one of their own, someone who cared not for recognition, but for real impact. Alina observed these efforts with cautious curiosity. She saw that Adrian had not returned to his former life of luxury or privilege, that he had not tried to impress anyone with money or influence. Instead, he had chosen humility, patience, and service, showing through his actions that he valued the relationships he had built more than any material wealth. She watched him interact with children, help elderly neighbors, and work tirelessly on projects for the town's benefit. Each day, her anger softened further, replaced by admiration and a renewed sense of trust. She realized that the man she had fallen for was still there, beneath the layers of secrecy, waiting for a chance to rebuild what had been broken. One quiet afternoon, Adrian approached Alina while she was arranging flowers in the garden. There was no fanfare, no grand gestures, just a simple, heartfelt conversation. He spoke honestly about his fears, his mistakes, and his desire to make things right. He admitted that deceiving her had been wrong, but he explained that it had come from a place of fear and longing, not malice. Alina listened intently, recognizing the sincerity in his voice and in his eyes. She felt the warmth of the man she had known, the Adam who had laughed with her, helped the town, and shared quiet moments without expectation. For the first time since the revelation, she felt hope that they could rebuild a genuine connection, one rooted in honesty, trust, and mutual respect. Their reconciliation was gradual. They spent time together, not rushing or forcing emotions, but simply enjoying each other's presence. Adrian continued to live simply, sharing the routines of the farm and the town. Alina engaged with him openly, asking questions, sharing thoughts, and offering her own guidance in community projects. They laughed together, celebrated small victories, and navigated disagreements with patience. Trust, once broken, was being carefully rebuilt, layer by layer, and each small step reinforced the bond that had first drawn them together. For Adrian, this was a lesson in humility and patience. For Alina, it was a lesson in understanding and forgiveness. As the seasons changed, their relationship deepened. They discovered shared passions beyond the farm love, for nature, a desire to help others, and a respect for simple, meaningful living. They spent evenings walking through fields, sharing stories under the stars, and talking about dreams and hopes. Adrian revealed more about his past in measured, thoughtful ways, allowing Alina to understand him fully without overwhelming her. She appreciated his honesty and began to see the courage it took for him to live authentically, to face the consequences of his choices, and to continue contributing selflessly to the community. The town itself became a symbol of their journey, through droughts, challenges, and misunderstandings. The community had relied on Adrian's knowledge, patience, and humility. Now, they saw him as a person who had chosen a life of service, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. Neighbors, once curious or skeptical, began to trust him fully, appreciating both his contributions and his respect for their lives. Children ran to greet him. Farmers sought his advice, and Alina witnessed these interactions with pride, realizing that the man she knew had influenced the town in meaningful and lasting ways. It was a quiet, unspoken validation of his sincerity. Adrian and Alina began to build a life together, carefully and thoughtfully. They spent time learning from one another, balancing their differences and nurturing shared dreams. Adrian learned the value of patience, humility, and genuine connection, while Alina discovered the depth of trust, empathy, and forgiveness. Their bond became a foundation not only for their personal happiness, but also for a partnership that positively impacted everyone around them. The love they cultivated was not built on wealth, status, or convenience, but on shared experiences, honesty, and mutual respect. Though the past could not be erased, they learned to move forward with it as a lesson rather than a burden. Adrian understood that secrecy, even when well-intentioned, had consequences, and he embraced transparency in every part of his life from that point onward. Alina, in turn, learned that trust could be restored through consistent action, patience, and sincerity. Together, they faced challenges, celebrated victories, and built a connection stronger than what either had imagined possible. The journey had been difficult. It had forged a bond built to last. By the time the next harvest arrived, the town had changed in subtle but important ways. Crops flourished, the community worked more closely together, and a sense of resilience had taken root. Adrian's quiet support had made a tangible difference. But more importantly, it had shown that true leadership came from humility, integrity, and service. Alina, now comfortable and confident in her renewed trust, worked alongside him, guiding projects, teaching children, and sharing wisdom with neighbors. Their partnership extended beyond romance. It became a shared mission to nurture the town, care for its people, and lead by example. Even the media eventually left, unable to stir more drama, and the town returned to its peaceful rhythm. Adrian and Alina continued to live humbly, enjoying small pleasures. Morning walks through fields, shared meals, and quiet evenings by the fire. Their relationship, tested by secrecy and honesty, had grown stronger, more resilient, and more genuine. They had discovered that love was not about wealth or status, but about patience, understanding, and shared values. Each day reinforced the lessons they had learned, the importance of sincerity, the power of action over words, and the strength that comes from trust rebuilt carefully over time. In the end, Adrian found something he had never experienced in his previous life: true happiness rooted in authenticity and connection. Alina discovered that people are more than their mistakes, that love can survive deception when met with honesty and effort, and that trust, once rebuilt, can be stronger than before. Together, they created a life that was meaningful, balanced, and full of purpose. Their story became a quiet legend in the town, not about wealth or fame, but about courage, sincerity, and the remarkable power of genuine human connection. Adrian and Alina's journey was a testament to the fact that love and trust are not given lightly. They're earned through patience, honesty, and action. They had faced fear, deception, and doubt, yet emerged with a bond stronger than what either had imagined. For Adrian, the billionaire, who had once been lonely in his world of wealth, and for Alina, the kind-hearted teacher who valued honesty above all. The experience had transformed their lives. They had found not just love, but purpose, connection, and a life that neither money nor status could have provided.